I think the Zobrist piece, Greg, was so important and remains so important to the whole market at large. This is now the piece that unlocks the rest of the conversation here at the Opryland. The outfielders can now start to move. The Mets obviously weren't really in the outfield market quite as much, but a team like the Giants, they were certainly in there on Ben Zobrist this offseason. Obviously, he is not going to San Francisco, so now the Giants can turn their attention elsewhere to the outfield pieces. And Greg, one point I want to make here on Zobrist as well. You talk about why the fit is so good. Well, this year, Greg, the Cubs struck out more than 1,500 times this season. More than 1,500. One of only 3 teams in baseball history to fan that often in a single season. So we saw that come up to them, certainly in the NLCS. That was one of their huge weaknesses there against the Mets. Well, Ben Zobrist, Greg, over the last couple years, among one of the 13 players in the entire sport with at least 1,100 plate appearances and 140 or fewer strikeouts. He is a perfect fit for what the Cubs now need to do to get deeper into October.
I want to follow up on Zobrist because you mentioned the Giants are going to turn their attention to the free agent outfielders. But what about a team like the Mets? What kind of player do they turn their attention to? Because you were one of many insiders that say they were heavily involved on Ben Zobrist.
Yes, maybe a left-swinging infielder by the name of Daniel Murphy. Perhaps, Greg, they could have a reunion there because the other options there for the Mets from a standpoint of the free agent market, it's relatively thin on infielders, except I'll give you one name right now. Remember Ian Desmond. They liked him enough in the last couple years. There were talks at times about a rare in-division trade with the Nationals because they liked Ian Desmond that much. So I do think Desmond fits somewhere potentially for the Mets in the middle part of the diamond. The price point on Desmond, Greg, might not end up being that much different than the 4-year offer they gave to Ben Zobrist, and of course Zobrist turned down. So I would say keeping a close eye on Ian Desmond as a possible fit there for the Mets. Also, as Asdrubal Cabrera is still out there, he can play second, he can play short, he can play third. Not quite the Zobrist-esque positional versatility, but some of that there for Asdrubal Cabrera as well.
I wonder if the Mets and the Cubs are sitting in their suite right now going, is the new National League power the Arizona Diamondbacks? Acquiring Shelby Miller, they gave up a lot to get him, John Paul, but do you look at the Diamondbacks as the new power in the NL West?
Well, let's think about this, Greg. You go 1, 2, 3 in their rotation right now. You talk about depth. Obviously, let's compare them to the Dodgers, for example. Kershaw and Greinke, pretty comparable. On down the list, you might actually start to give the edge to the Diamondbacks, who also had Robbie Ray come on pretty well, Ruby De La Rosa during the course of the season, Chase Anderson. They've got some depth there in their rotation. And one part of this deal, Greg, that's very important, let's not forget last offseason, Yasmani Tomas. Without Ender Inciarte now in the Arizona outfield, there are now more at-bats for Tomas to see exactly what he can do from a power standpoint. Of course, we know they've got Paul Goldschmidt there in the middle of that lineup, but Tomas can deliver some thunder as well. I would say, Greg, maybe one more reliever just to round out that relief corps. They're pretty good back there, but maybe one more guy, because once you've gone this far, Greg, you might as well try to go all the way. The Diamondbacks right now a very formidable force, I believe, there in the National League West. And now, of course, the question comes, what else do the Dodgers do with their pitching staff, and what do the Giants do with their outfield to answer?
I will never second-guess you again, John Paul Morosi.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Greg.
Did not
and how
believe
about maybe not my trade from last night, although I did speak to one executive, I have to say, that supported my idea. Of course, not going to happen anymore. The idea I threw out there for Jose Fernandez last night, so maybe I wasn't quite as off base as everybody thought.
You know what? I fully supported you then, and I do that now.
Thank you, Greg.
John Paul Morosi works on MLB Tonight. We forgot about Yasmani Tomas. Opens up right field for Yasmani Tomas to play every day.
Well, hey, listen, if he can play every day, they like his power. They think it'll develop. If Tomas gets a chance, I'd like to see what he could do.
This team had a good offense. It reminded me of Chip Hale, the manager, just many ways scrappy and play the game right, play hard, advance bases, and they got Paul Goldschmidt. I mean, we're not even talking about it. He's like best players. Oh, by the way, there's a really good player at first base.
It's crazy. Tony La Russa was not going there to rebuild for years and years and years. He's a winner. He's used to it. Dave Stewart and Tony La Russa all smiles on Tuesday night. So much news to wrap our brains around. But you know what we should do next? Let's talk to John Farrell about the Boston Red Sox, because they were the team everyone was discussing this offseason. David Price, the new ace, or does